The crystal gardens of Luminarain, the outer reaches of the Andromeda spiral, where starlight danced through cosmic dust in patterns that would make poets weep, stood the crystal cities of Luminara Prime. The Seraphim had built their civilization, not through conquest or dominance, but through harmony with the very fabric of reality itself. Their crystalline bodies, translucent and beautiful, resonated with quantum frequencies that allowed them to shape matter at the molecular level. Elder Centaura moved through the resonance gardens, her crystalline form catching and refracting the light of 3 suns into rainbow patterns that painted the walls around her. The gardens themselves were alive with music, each crystal formation tuned to specific harmonic frequencies that created a symphony of pure mathematics. For 12,000 years, the Seraphim had lived this way, their entire civilization built on the principle that existence itself was a beautiful song to be cherished and protected. The first sign of trouble came not as a roar or explosion, but as silence. The outer system monitoring stations, delicate crystalline structures that sang with the rhythm of nearby stars, simply stopped transmitting. One by one, the harmonious voices of distant worlds fell quiet, leaving gaps in the cosmic symphony that made every Seraphim shudder with unease. The darkness between stars archive keeper Zephyr was the first to understand what they were facing. Deep in the quantum data vaults beneath Luminara's surface, he discovered records that had been sealed for millennia, ancient warnings about creatures that existed in the spaces between dimensions, feeding on the very energy that gave stars their fire and life its spark. The Shadow Devourers had awakened. These beings were not like anything the Seraphim had encountered in their peaceful exploration of the galaxy. They were pure entropy given form, creatures of living darkness that consumed energy in all its forms. Light, heat, electrical current, even the bioelectric fields that powered living brains, all of it was food to them. They moved through space like a plague of hungry shadows, leaving behind only cold, dead worlds drained of every spark of energy. Zephyr's crystalline hands trembled as he read the ancient texts. The last time the Shadow Devourers had emerged, entire galactic sectors had gone dark. Civilizations that had stood for millions of years were reduced to lifeless husks in a matter of decades. The records spoke of desperate alliances, of peaceful species learning to make weapons of war, of heroes who gave everything to push the shadows back into the void between realities. But that was before. This time, the Shadow Devourers were stronger, more organized, and hungrier than ever. The quantum scream the attack on the Kepler station changed everything. The research outpost, home to 3 million Seraphim scientists and their families, was consumed in less than 6 hours. The Shadow Devourers descended like a storm of living darkness, their forms shifting and writhing as they drained the station's power cores, life support systems, and finally the life force of every being aboard. The last transmission from Kepler station was a quantum-encrypted message that would haunt the Seraphim for generations. They eat light itself. They eat thoughts. They eat hope. Warn everyone. Run if you can. Fight if you must. But do not let them reach the core worlds. Elder Centaura stood before the Grand Assembly, her harmonious voice carrying across the crystalline chamber to every member of their species. The Seraphim had no concept of military rank or war councils. It's only the gentle guidance of those who had lived longest and learned most. But wisdom meant nothing against an enemy that existed only to consume. Fellow resonators, she began, her words creating visible patterns in the air as her quantum field interacted with the chamber's acoustics. We face extinction, not conquest, not subjugation, but complete annihilation. The Shadow Devourers do not negotiate. They do not compromise. They simply consume until nothing remains. The assembly fell silent, a silence that spoke of fear deeper than any scream. The Seraphim were not warriors. They had no weapons beyond tools for shaping crystal and crystal, no armies beyond the maintenance crews that kept their cities functioning. Their entire civilization was built on the belief that the universe was fundamentally good, that all conflicts could be resolved through understanding and patience. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The desperate Gambit Archive keeper Zephyr proposed the unthinkable. Deep in the ancient records, it found references to something called the Quantum Reach Protocol, a theoretical method of sending messages across impossible distances by quantum entanglement with other dimensional frequencies. How the theory suggested that somewhere in the vast cosmos, there might be other species capable of fighting the Shadow Devourers. The energy requirements would drain our entire planet's core, Elder Centaura pointed out. We would have perhaps days of power remaining after such a transmission. Then we must make those days count, Zephyr replied. The protocol can reach beyond our galaxy, beyond our dimension if necessary. If there are warriors somewhere in the cosmos, someone who can fight where we cannot, we must find them. The decision to activate the Quantum Reach protocol was not made lightly. It represented everything the Seraphim were not, a desperate gamble, a cry for help from strangers, an admission that their philosophy of peace and harmony was not enough to save them. But as reports came in of system after system going dark, as the Shadow Devourers consumed entire civilizations in their march toward the core worlds, the choice became clear. They would rather die trying than accept extinction passively. The message. In the void, the Quantum Reach protocol activated with a resonance that shook Luminara primed to its crystal foundations. Every power grid on the planet fed into the massive transmitter array, sending a message that would travel not through normal space, but through the quantum foam that connected all points in the universe. The message was simple, encoded in mathematical principles that any intelligent species should be able to understand. We are dying. Our worlds burn with shadow. If anyone receives this message, if anyone has the power to fight what we cannot fight, please help us. We offer everything we have in exchange for hope. The transmission lasted for 18 hours, draining Luminara Prime's energy reserves to critical levels. When it ended, the planet's cities dimmed to emergency power, and the beautiful crystal symphonies fell silent. All they could do now was wait and pray to whatever forces governed the cosmos that someone, somewhere was listening. Earth answers. The Deep Space Monitoring Station on Luna was humanity's most advanced listening post, designed to detect everything from natural cosmic phenomena to potential alien communications. Chief Communications Officer Maria Zentos was halfway through her night shift when every sensor array on the station exploded with activity. "What the hell?" Zeno muttered, pulling up the signal analysis on her primary display. Was unlike anything in their databases, a coherent quantum pattern that seemed to carry information across multiple dimensional frequencies simultaneously. More importantly, it was clearly artificial, clearly intelligent, and clearly desperate. Within hours, the transmission had been decoded by the best linguists and mathematicians the United Earth Defense Coalition had available. Dr. James Chin, the head of xenobiology research, was pulled from his sleep and rushed to the Pentagon, where emergency sessions were already underway. "This is it," Dr. Chen said, his hands shaking as he reviewed the preliminary translation. "First contact, and they're asking for help." Admiral Saravos, the hard-edged commander of Earth Space Forces, studied the decoded message with the calculating gaze of a career military officer. The alien transmission included star charts, biological data, and most importantly, tactical information about an enemy that was systematically destroying entire civilizations. "Show me what we know," Admiral Voss ordered. The holographic display activated, showing a three-dimensional map of the aliens' galaxy with spreading zones of darkness marking the Shadow Devourers' advance. The pattern was clear. This was not random destruction, but a coordinated campaign of total annihilation. "The species calls themselves the Seraphim," Dr. Chen explained. "They appear to be entirely peaceful, possibly never having fought a war in their entire history. The enemy they call Shadow Devourers are some kind of energy-based parasites that consume all forms of power, including biological life force." "How long do they have?" I asked General Marcus Torres, Admiral Voss's second-in-command, according to their timeline. "Maybe 40 days before their core systems are overrun. After that, ... Dr. Chen trailed off, studying the data. "Admiral, they're facing complete extinction, not conquest, not subjugation. These Shadow Devourers appear to consume everything organic and leave nothing behind." Admiral Voss was quiet for a long moment, studying the star charts the Seraphim had provided. Distance was vast, but not impossible with their newest hyperspace drives. More importantly, the aliens had included detailed information about their own defensive capabilities, their technology, even their biological weaknesses. Either they were incredibly naive, or they were so desperate they were willing to trust complete strangers with everything. "What do we know about these Seraphim? Are they trustworthy?" Voss asked. "Everything in their transmission suggests complete honesty," Dr. Chen replied. "The emotional resonance patterns in their message indicate genuine fear, desperation, and hope. You can't fake that level of biological stress response across quantum frequencies. These people are dying and they know it. And they chose to contact us," General Torres pointed out. "Out of all the civilizations in the galaxy, their message reached Earth. That's either incredible luck or incredible desperation." Admiral Voss made her decision. "Signal the Global Defense Council. Emergency session in 4 hours. We're going to war." The promise of fire the next 72 hours saw the largest military mobilization in human history. From the orbital shipyards around Earth to the mining colonies in the asteroid belt, every available warship was recalled and prepared for deployment. The human fleet was a testament to centuries of conflict, massive dreadnoughts bristling with plasma cannons, and railguns, sleek destroyers designed for high-speed strikes, and fighter squadrons that could turn space itself into a battlefield. But it wasn't just the ships that made humanity dangerous. It was the people who crewed them, humans who had evolved on a planet where everything tried to kill them, who had survived ice ages and asteroid impacts, who had turned their talent for violence into an art form through thousands of years of warfare against each other. Dr. Chen worked around the clock to establish a stable communication link with the Seraphim, using their quantum transmission frequency to send a reply across the void. The message was simple, encoded in the same mathematical language the aliens had used. Message received. Help is coming. Hold on. On Luminara Prime, Elder Centaura wept tears of crystalline light as the message appeared on their quantum receivers. The beings from the distant galaxy had not only heard their plea, but were actually coming to help. She had no idea what kind of species would cross the void between galaxies to aid complete strangers, but she knew that hope, real hope, was finally within reach. The human war fleet began its long journey into the unknown, carrying with them the fire of a species that had never learned to surrender. They had no idea what they would find when they reached Seraphim space. But they knew one thing with absolute certainty. Anyone who threatened innocent people would learn why. Earth was considered the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. The shadow. Devourers had awakened an ancient hunger, but they had also awakened something far more terrifying: the protective instincts of humanity. And when humans decided to protect someone, they did not stop until the threat was eliminated, or they were all dead. The galaxy was about to learn the difference between a civilization that had evolved in paradise and one that had clawed its way to the stars from the depths of hell itself. The war machine awakens. The orbital shipyards around Earth hummed with activity that had not been seen since the Mars colonial wars. Admiral Sarah Voss stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned flagship Defiant, watching as the largest military fleet in human history assembled in formation. 347 warships of various classes, from massive carrier dreadnoughts to nimble reconnaissance frigates, all bristling with weapons designed for one purpose: killing things that needed to die. General Marcus Torres joined her at the viewport, his weathered face reflecting the lights of the assembled fleet. "Logistics reports were loaded for a 6-month campaign," he said. "Plasma charges, railgun slugs, nuclear warheads, and enough medical supplies to treat a small war. The Marines are loaded for anything from ship-to-ship combat to planetary assault." "And the new weapons?" Voss asked. Dr. Chen's team worked miracles. "Based on the Seraphim data about these shadow devourers, we've developed quantum disruptor charges that should interfere with their energy absorption capabilities. If the theory is correct, we can actually hurt these things." Now Torres paused. "Of course, the theory could be completely wrong, and we might be flying into a meat grinder." Admiral Voss smiled grimly. "Wouldn't be the first time humanity bet everything on a theory and a prayer," The final briefing took place in the Defiant's main conference room. With ship captains and marine commanders attending either in person or via hologram, Voss stood before the assembled officers, her voice carrying the weight of authority earned through decades of combat. "People, we are about to do something unprecedented," she began. "We are going to war for a species we've never met in defense, of worlds we've never seen, against an enemy we don't fully understand. The Seraphim asked for help, and we are going to give it to them." Captain Elena Rodriguez, commander of the strike cruiser Thunderbolt, raised her hand. "Admiral, what if we can't win? What if these shadow devourers are too powerful?" Voss's expression hardened. "Then we make them pay for every inch of space, every ship, every life. We show them that there are some species in this galaxy that don't go quietly into the night." The long journey, the hyperspace journey to Seraphim space, took 18 days. With the human fleet traveling through routes that had never appeared on any Earth navigation chart, the Seraphim quantum transmission had included detailed hyperspace coordinates, revealing a network of stable corridors through folded space that cut what should have been a 6-month journey down to less than 3 weeks. Dr. Chen spent the journey studying every piece of Seraphim data they had received, trying to understand both their new allies and their common enemy. The cultural differences were staggering. The Seraphim had never fought a war, never developed weapons more advanced than mining tools, and appeared to view the universe as fundamentally benevolent. They were, in every way that mattered, the complete opposite of humanity. "They're like children," he reported to Admiral Voss during one of their daily briefings. "Intellectually, their technology is centuries ahead of ours in many ways. But emotionally, culturally, they've never had to develop the cynicism and suspicion that keeps humans alive. They trusted us completely based on one message exchange, which makes them worth saving," Voss replied simply. The shadow devourers, by contrast, appeared to be everything humanity had nightmares about. Pure predators that existed only to consume, they showed no interest in communication, no capacity for mercy, and no goal beyond the complete consumption of all energy in the universe. They were the ultimate embodiment of entropy given form and purpose, first contact under fire. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Seraphim home system to find a battle already in progress. The crystalline defenders had managed to construct some kind of energy barrier around their core worlds, a shimmering dome of quantum force that was holding back waves of writhing shadow. But the barrier was failing, great chunks of darkness, eating through the protective field like acid through tissue. "Sweet Jesus," whispered Captain Rodriguez, as her sensors registered the scope of the battle. "There must be thousands of those things." The Shadow Devourers were unlike anything in human tactical databases. They appeared as masses of living darkness, constantly shifting between solid and energy states, with appendages that could stretch across hundreds of kilometers to lash at their targets. Some were the size of frigates, others rivaled Earth's largest space stations. All of them pulsed with a hunger that seemed to warp space itself around them. "All ships, battle stations," Admiral Voss commanded. "We're jumping right into the deep end. Show these shadows what human weapons can do." That first engagement lasted exactly 14 minutes and proved that human weapons were devastatingly effective against the Shadow Devourers. Plasma cannons superheated the creatures' dark matter composition until they exploded in bursts of energy, while railgun slugs traveling at significant fractions of light speed punched through their shifting forms, like bullets through smoke. The quantum disruptor charges worked even better than Dr. Chen had hoped, creating fields of disrupted space-time that prevented the creatures from absorbing energy from their surroundings. But the shadows adapted quickly. Within hours of the first battle, they began altering their forms to better resist human weapons, developing armor-like carapaces and learning to dodge the slower-moving plasma bolts. The war was already evolving, and both sides were learning fast. Meeting the Crystal Angels, the first formal meeting between humans and Seraphim, took place aboard the research vessel Harmony, one of the crystalline ships that had survived the battle. Admiral Voss, accompanied by Dr. Chen and a small honor guard, transferred to the alien vessel using environmental suits designed for first contact scenarios. The interior of the Seraphim ship was unlike anything humans had ever seen. Instead of metal corridors and mechanical systems, everything was grown from living crystal that pulsed with soft light. The walls themselves seemed to sing with harmonious frequencies that created a sense of peace and wonder that was almost overwhelming. Elder Sintara met them in the ship's central chamber, her crystalline form refracting the ambient light into patterns that seemed to dance with intelligence. When she spoke, her words appeared as visible symbols in the air before being translated by the ship's systems. "Admiral Voss," she said, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, "across the vast emptiness between galaxies, you actually came to help us." "We promised we would," Voss replied simply. "Humans keep their promises." The cultural exchange that followed was both illuminating and heartbreaking. The Seraphim were everything humanity was not: peaceful, trusting, innocent in ways that made hardened soldiers weep. They had built a civilization based on harmony and cooperation, had never known war or hunger or the thousand small cruelties that shaped human nature. They were, in every sense, what humanity might have become if Earth had been a kinder world. "We have no experience with violence, Elder," Sintara admitted. "Our young ones cannot comprehend what the Shadow Devourers represent. How does one fight an enemy that cannot be reasoned with?" "With everything you have," General Torres replied. "With weapons and tactics and the willingness to do terrible things to protect what you love. War isn't noble or beautiful, Elder Sintara. It's just necessary." Dr. Chen worked with Seraphim scientists to share tactical data about the Shadow Devourers. The crystalline beings had managed to gather extensive information about their enemy through quantum resonance scanning, revealing details about the creature's biology and behavior that would prove crucial in the battles to come. "They are not truly alive," explained archive keeper Zephin, his crystalline form crackling with stored data. "They exist in the spaces between dimensions, feeding on the quantum foam that holds reality together. When they consume energy, they grow stronger and reproduce through a process of quantum mitosis. So they're like a virus," Dr. Chen mused. "But instead of infecting cells, they infect entire star systems." "Precisely. And like a virus, they will not stop until they have consumed everything, or something destroys them completely." The shadows. Strike Back, the Shadow Devourers' response to humanity's arrival was swift and decisive. Instead of continuing their slow consumption of the Seraphim homeworlds, they began massing their forces for a coordinated assault on the human fleet. Intelligence reports suggested they were drawing creatures from across the galaxy, creating a concentration of shadow forms unlike anything they had previously employed. "They see us as a threat," Admiral Voss observed, as she studied the tactical displays. "Good. Fear makes enemies predictable." The massive battle that followed would be studied in military academies for centuries. The Shadow Devourers attacked in waves, using their ability to phase between dimensions to appear throughout the human formation simultaneously. But humanity's centuries of warfare had taught them to fight in 3 dimensions while planning for 4, and their battle doctrine adapted to the extra-dimensional threat with deadly efficiency. Captain Rodriguez's strike group pioneered the tactic of shadow boxing, using quantum disruptor fields to force the creatures into solid form before hitting them with conventional weapons. Meanwhile, the Marine boarding parties developed techniques for fighting inside partially consumed Seraphim vessels, using their environmental suits to survive in areas where the Shadow Devourers had drained all energy. The turning point came when Dr. Chen's research team made a breakthrough discovery. By analyzing captured shadow matter, they found that the creatures were all connected through quantum entanglement to a central nexus. Like a hive mind, they shared information and energy through dimensional links that could be traced back to their source. "It's like a neural network," Dr. Chen explained to the command staff. "Cut the connections, and you can isolate individual creatures. Find the central node, and you can potentially disrupt the entire network." "Where is this nexus?" Admiral Voss asked. "According to our calculations, it's located in a pocket dimension anchored to a dead star system about 40 light-years from here. The Shadow Devourers have been using it as a breeding ground and command center." Admiral Voss smiled for the first time since the battle began. Then that's where we're going. Preparing for hell, the assault on the Shadow Devourer. Nexus required different tactics than anything the human fleet had previously employed. The target existed partially outside normal space-time, accessible only through quantum rifts that the creatures themselves had torn in reality. Worse, intelligence suggested that the Nexus contained the concentrated essence of every civilization the Shadow Devourers had consumed over millennia, billions of lives reduced to pure energy and stored, like food in a cosmic pantry. "We're not just fighting for the Seraphim anymore," General Torres announced to his assembled Marines. "We're fighting for every species these things have murdered, every world they've sterilized, every dream they've consumed. This is where we make them pay." The Marines prepared for combat in conditions that would challenge even their extensive training. The Nexus existed in a state of constant dimensional flux, where the laws of physics were more suggestions than rules. Their equipment was modified with quantum stabilizers that would keep them anchored to baseline reality, while their weapons were upgraded with exotic matter charges designed to disrupt the pocket dimension itself. Meanwhile, the fleet prepared for what might be the most dangerous naval engagement in human history. The Shadow Devourers would be fighting on their home ground, in a place where they were strongest and humanity's technological advantages might be meaningless. But the alternative was watching as they consumed the rest of the galaxy, one civilization at a time. Elder Centaura joined Admiral Voss for the final briefing, her crystalline form dim with exhaustion from maintaining the quantum barriers around her homeworld. "Admiral, are you certain about this course of action?" "The Nexus is beyond dangerous. It is a wound in reality itself, which is exactly why it has to be destroyed," Voss replied. "Sometimes the only way to save something beautiful is to do something terrible." The Seraphim Elder was quiet for a long moment. "Your species confuses me, Admiral Voss. You are capable of such violence, yet you cross the galaxy to help strangers. You prepare for war while speaking of saving beauty. How do you reconcile these contradictions?" Admiral Voss looked out at the assembled fleet, thinking of Earth and the long, bloody road that had brought humanity to the stars. "We learned to be monsters so we could protect the things we love, Elder Centaura. And right now, that includes you and your people." As the human fleet prepared to depart for the Nexus system, the Seraphim offered their own form of assistance. Using their quantum resonance technology, they created a harmonic frequency that would destabilize the pocket dimension's foundations. It was a weapon of sorts, the one that required the Seraphim to risk their own life force to power it. "Don't have to do this," Dr. Chen pointed out. "We can handle the mission ourselves." "No," Elder Centaura replied. "You have shown us that some things are worth fighting for. Now we will show you that some things are worth dying for." The combined human-Seraphim fleet departed for the Nexus system, carrying with them the hopes of two species and the promise of fire for those who threaten the innocent. Behind them, the Seraphim homeworld continued its slow song of crystal and light, a civilization that had learned to sing despite the darkness that threatened to consume everything they loved. Into the heart of darkness, the Nexus system was a graveyard of stars, a place where the Shadow Devourers had been feeding for so long that reality itself had begun to break down. Space was wrong here, distances that should have been measured in kilometers stretched across light years, while other regions compressed entire solar systems into areas the size of Earth's moon. The laws of physics operated on principles that hurt to contemplate. Admiral Sarah Voss stood on the bridge of the Defiant, studying sensor readings that shouldn't have been possible. The pocket dimension that housed the Shadow Devourer Nexus existed as a tumor in space-time, a place where the quantum foam had been twisted into shapes that violated the fundamental principles of existence. "Sensor analysis is problematic," reported Lieutenant Commander Park, the ship's science officer. "The dimensional distortions are playing havoc with our instruments. What we're seeing might be real, might be echoes from parallel timelines, or might be the Nexus trying to drive us insane through sensory overload." "What's our best guess on enemy strength?" General Marcus Torres asked from his position at the tactical station. "Unknown," Park replied honestly. The quantum interference is so severe that we can't get accurate readings. Could be hundreds of shadow devourers in there. Could be hundreds of thousands. The pocket dimension appears to be larger inside than outside, so normal spatial relationships don't apply. Elder Centaura's image flickered on the main view screen, transmitted from her command ship through quantum entanglement communication. Her crystalline form was noticeably dimmer than before, the effort of maintaining the harmonic disruptor field draining her life force with each passing hour. "Admiral Voss," she said, her musical voice carrying harmonics of exhaustion and determination. "Our resonance sensors are detecting something ... disturbing. The Nexus contains not just shadow devourers, but the consumed essence of every civilization they have destroyed. Billions of voices crying out in hunger and despair, twisted in two. Something that serves their destroyers." Dr. James Chen, monitoring from the research station, looked up from his quantum analysis console. The implications are staggering. If the shadow devourers are using consumed civilizations as some kind of computational matrix, they might have access to the collective knowledge and technology of every species they've destroyed. "Meaning they know we're coming?" Admiral Voss concluded, "and they know exactly how we think and fight." "Worse than that," Dr. Chen continued. "They might be able to predict our tactics based on the strategic patterns of every military force they've ever consumed. We could be walking into a trap designed specifically for us." Admiral Voss was quiet for a moment, considering the implications. Then she smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Good thing we're not every other species they've faced. Signal all ships we're going in." The dimensional rift. The assault on the Nexus began with the most dangerous maneuver in human military history, using modified hyperspace drives and quantum tunneling technology reverse-engineered from Seraphim data. The human fleet would literally punch a hole through the dimensional barrier and enter the pocket universe where the shadow devourers had built their stronghold. "All ships report ready," came the voice of Captain Elena Rodriguez from the strike cruiser Thunderbolt. Round her, the rest of the fleet maintained precise formation, their quantum stabilizers synchronized to prevent them from being torn apart by dimensional shear forces. "Seraphim harmonic disruptor is charging to full power," reported Elder Centaura, her form now so dim that she was barely visible. "We will have perhaps 30 minutes before the field collapses and the Nexus seals itself again." "Then we make those 30 minutes count," Admiral Voss replied. "All ships, initiate dimensional breach in 3.2.1. Mark." Combined humans are often fleet disappeared into a tear in reality itself, emerging moments later in a realm that could only be described as hell made manifest. The Nexus existed as a vast sphere of twisted space, its interior illuminated by the dying light of consumed stars. Floating throughout this nightmare realm were structures that defied comprehension, organic cities built from crystallized pain, manufacturing facilities that turned screaming energy into new shadow devourers, and at the center of it all, a massive construct that pulsed with the collective agony of 1 trillion consumed souls. "Jesus Christ," whispered someone on the bridge, their voice barely audible over the quantum interference. The shadow devourer's response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of the creatures materialized around the human fleet, their forms now gigantic beyond anything previously encountered. These were not the mere scouts that had attacked Seraphim space. These were the progenitors, the original shadow devourers that had been feeding and growing for eons. "All ships, weapons free," Admiral Voss commanded. "Show them how Earth fights." The battle for reality, the space battle that followed, was unlike anything in human military history. The combined fleet fought not just in 3 dimensions, but across multiple layers of reality as the shadow devourers used their mastery of dimensional manipulation to attack from impossible angles. Human ships found themselves engaging enemies that existed partially in parallel timelines, while marine boarding parties fought creatures that could phase between solid and energy states at will. But humanity's greatest advantage had always been adaptability. Within minutes of the battle's start, Captain Rodriguez pioneered a new tactic of dimensional anchoring, using quantum disruptor fields to lock enemy creatures into baseline reality where conventional weapons could affect them. Meanwhile, the carrier groups launched fighter squadrons equipped with exotic matter missiles that could track targets across dimensional boundaries. The Marine assault on the Central Nexus facility was led by Colonel Sarah Mitchell, a veteran of the Mars Colonial Wars, who had volunteered for the most dangerous mission in human history. Her assault teams used quantum-stabilized drop pods to penetrate the facility's defenses. Their powered armor modified with dimensional anchors that kept them locked to primary reality. "This place is wrong on every possible level," Mitchell reported, as her teams fought through corridors that existed in geometries that shouldn't have been possible. "The architecture itself is trying to drive us insane. Stay focused on your mission parameters, and don't look directly at the wall decorations." The Shadow Devourers had turned the consumed civilizations into a living computational matrix, using their combined knowledge to predict and counter human tactics. But they had never faced a species that had spent its entire evolutionary history adapting to hostile environments and impossible odds. Every time the creatures adapted to human weapons, humans adapted right back, developing new tactics faster than their enemies could process. The heart of hunger kernel. Mitchell's assault team reached the central core of the Nexus facility. After fighting through defenses that violated every law of physics and several laws of common sense, the core chamber was a sphere of crystallized agony the size of a city. Pulsing with the combined life force of every civilization, the Shadow Devourers had consumed over millennia. Within its depths, billions of voices cried out in eternal hunger, their identities subsumed into the collective consciousness of their destroyers. "Ma'am," reported Sergeant Davis, his voice shaking despite years of combat experience. "The quantum readings are off the charts. This thing isn't just a power source. It's the Shadow Devourer's entire reproductive system. They're using the consumed life force to birth new creatures." Mitchell studied the tactical display showing the facility's structure. The core was protected by layers of dimensional distortion fields that made direct approach impossible, while guardian creatures the size of battleships patrolled the surrounding space. But there was a weakness. The facility's quantum resonance was synchronized with the pocket dimension itself. If they could disrupt that resonance— "Dr. Chen, are you reading this?" she called over the quantum communication link. "Affirmative, Colonel. The core's harmonic frequency is the keystone holding this entire pocket dimension together. If we can destabilize it using the Xerophime disruptor field, the whole place comes down like a house of cards," Mitchell finished. "But we need to get closer to plant the charges." The final assault required everything humanity had learned about warfare in hostile environments. Mitchell's Marines used their quantum stabilizers to navigate through regions where cause and effect operated in reverse, while engineer teams set up the dimensional charges that would amplify Elder Centaura's harmonic disruptor field. Above them, the space battle raged with increasing intensity. Admiral Voss coordinated the fleet's movements with the precision of a master conductor, using humanity's superior tactical flexibility to counter the Shadow Devourer's overwhelming numbers. The carrier groups provided close support for the ground assault, while the heavy cruisers engaged the massive progenitor creatures that emerged from the facility's depths. Admiral reported Captain Rodriguez from the Thunderbolt were reading massive energy spikes from the Nexus core. "Whatever Colonel Mitchell is doing down there, it's working. Shadow Devourers are going crazy trying to stop her." The quantum resonance, Elder Centaura, felt her life force ebbing as she poured everything she had into the harmonic disruptor field. The Seraphim leader had synchronized her own quantum signature with the device, using her body as a living amplifier for the resonance wave that would destabilize the pocket dimension. Around her, the bridge of her command ship flickered between dimensions as the harmonic field interfaced with the Nexus facility. Elder Centaura came, Dr. Chen's voice over the communication system. "Your life signs are approaching critical levels. You need to reduce power to the disruptor field." "Negative, Dr. Chen," Centaura replied, her voice now barely audible. "This is our one chance to end the Shadow Devourers forever. My life is a small price to pay for the freedom of the galaxy." The harmonic disruptor field reached critical resonance just as Colonel Estell's team finished placing the dimensional charges around the Nexus core. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The crystallized agony began to crack and fracture, releasing waves of energy that had been trapped for eons. The voices of consumed civilizations cried out one final time, not in hunger, but in relief, as their stolen essence was finally freed from eternal torment. All teams, emergency extraction, Mitchell ordered as the facility began to collapse. Around them, the pocket dimension is destabilizing. We have maybe 2 minutes before this place tears itself apart. The Marine teams fought their way back to the extraction points, while reality itself unraveled around them. Corridors that had existed moments before simply ceased to be, replaced by voids that led to parallel dimensions where different versions of the battle played out with different outcomes. Only their quantum stabilizers kept them anchored to baseline reality as they raced against the collapse of space-time itself. The fire spreads, the destruction of the Nexus core sent shockwaves throughout the Shadow Devourer network. Creatures throughout the galaxy suddenly found themselves cut off from their collective consciousness. Their connection to the central hive mind severed by the harmonic disruption. For the first time in their existence, they experienced something approaching fear. Admiral Voss coordinated the fleet's withdrawal as the pocket dimension collapsed in on itself. Human ships used their superior speed to escape the dimensional implosion while the Seraphim vessels rode the harmonic waves generated by Elder Centaura's sacrifice. The Elder ship was the last to leave, her life force finally extinguished as she ensured every human and Seraphim vessel made it to safety. "Status report," Voss called, as the fleet regrouped in normal space. "Nexus facility completely destroyed," reported Dr. Chen. "Quantum readings show the pocket dimension has collapsed into a stable null space. The Shadow Devourer's central command structure is gone. What about the remaining creatures?" asked General Torres. "Without the Nexus to coordinate them there? Reverting to basic predatory behavior? Dangerous, but no longer organized. Planetary defense forces should be able to handle isolated groups." The return journey to Seraphim space revealed the full scope of their victory. System after system that had been consumed by Shadow was beginning to show signs of recovery as local star systems reignited and dead worlds started to heal. The Shadow Devourer's network had been so dependent on the Nexus that its destruction caused a cascade failure throughout their entire infrastructure. The new alliance, the memorial service for Elder Centaura, took place in the Crystal Gardens of Luminara Prime, where the surviving Seraphim gathered to honor their leader's sacrifice. Admiral Voss stood before the assembled crowd, her weathered face reflecting the soft light of the crystal formations as she spoke words that would be remembered for generations. "Elder Centaura asked me once how humanity could reconcile its capacity for violence with its desire to protect beauty," Voss said. "I told her that we learned to be monsters so we could defend the things we love. She taught us something equally important, that some things are worth dying for, and that sacrifice given freely is the most powerful force in the universe." The new archive keeper Zephin, his crystalline form still dim with grief, approached the Admiral after the ceremony. "What happens now, Admiral Voss?" "The Shadow Devourers are gone, but there may be other threats in the galaxy. Other species that see peace as weakness." Voss looked up at the stars, where human patrol ships now maintained watch alongside Seraphim research vessels. "Now we make sure this never happens again. Humanity will maintain a garrison here, and in return, your people will help us establish diplomatic contact with other civilizations. Together, we'll build something new, a galactic community where peaceful species can develop without fear of extinction." Dr. Chen, now serving as the human ambassador to the Seraphim, worked with local scientists to establish the protocols. For this new alliance, technological exchange was already proving beneficial to both species. Human military doctrine enhanced with Seraphim quantum technology, while Seraphim peaceful development was protected by human defensive capabilities. "It's ironic," Chen observed to Admiral Voss as they watched the joint patrols departing for the outer systems. The galaxy's most peaceful species and its most warlike species working together to protect everyone else. "Not ironic," Voss replied. "Natural. Seraphim remind us what we're fighting for, and we ensure they can continue to exist without compromising their ideals. It's the perfect partnership." Epilogue. The Watchers 5 years after the Battle of the Nexus. The Humans or Epheme Alliance had become the foundation for something unprecedented in galactic history, a true coalition of species dedicated to mutual protection and peaceful development. The joint fleet patrolled trade routes and responded to distress calls from civilizations. Throughout the local galactic cluster, Captain Elena Rodriguez, now commanding the Alliance flagship Harmony, received a quantum transmission from a previously unknown species in the Outer Rim. The message was familiar in its desperation. Another peaceful civilization facing extinction. From an aggressive neighbor, another plea for help from strangers who had nowhere else to turn. Signal the fleet, Rodriguez ordered. Plot a course for the transmission source. Send a message back. Tell them help is coming. The Alliance fleet departed into hyperspace, carrying with them the fire of humanity and the wisdom of the Seraphim. Behind them, the galaxy continued its ancient dance of creation and destruction. But now it danced to a different rhythm, one where those who threatened the innocent would face the combined wrath of species that had learned to stand together. Against the darkness, shadow devourers were gone, but their legacy lived on in the alliance they had inadvertently created. In trying to consume the galaxy, they had instead taught it to defend itself. And in the depths of space, human and Seraphim ships continued their eternal patrol, watching for threats and ready to answer any call for help that might echo across the void. The galaxy was no longer alone. The Watchers were on duty, and they would never abandon their post. End of story?